In the blistering heart of the Roman marketplace, where the sun burned like punishment itself, chaos breathed in every corner. The air shimmered with heat and cruelty, thick with dust and the scent of sweat and fear. You could taste the power in that air, the kind that belonged to men who believed they were gods because others knelt at their feet. And there, among the rows of trembling bodies chained together like discarded cattle, knelt a girl who refused to bow. Aurelia. Her knees pressed into the cracked stone, her wrists bruised and bleeding beneath the weight of iron cuffs. Her hair, once golden like sunrise, was matted with dirt and sweat, sticking to her face as the whip came down again. The sound sliced the air. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only lifted her chin, those silver-gray eyes cutting through the crowd like lightning before a storm. They called her cursed. They called her barren. They called her everything but what she truly was. The merchant's voice thundered over the marketplace, hoarse from shouting names, prices, and lies. Aurelia of the fallen house of Cashin. Wolf-blood without a pack. Damaged, but strong enough to serve. The crowd murmured like vultures circling prey. Someone spat near her feet. Another threw a pebble that hit her shoulder and rolled away like it, too, was ashamed to touch her. She didn't move. Inside, though, inside her chest, something was breaking and awakening all at once. A low hum beneath her skin. It was faint but steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. It scared her. It thrilled her. It was the one thing no chain could hold. The sun bore down harder, unforgiving. The stones burned against her knees. She could feel every judgmental gaze crawling across her back, every whisper tearing at what was left of her pride. Somewhere behind her, a child laughed, not cruelly, but curiously, and for a split second, Aurelia remembered what it was to be seen without hatred. But that moment vanished as quick as it came. The whip cracked again. This time she fell forward, palms scraping the rough stone. Blood smeared across her fingers. The merchant grinned, proud of his control. Proud of her pain. And yet, she smiled. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't madness. It was something quieter, the smile of someone who survived worse. Her lips parted, her voice barely a whisper, swallowed by the noise of the crowd. You will not break me. The merchant heard nothing. But the wind did. The wind always listened to those who spoke from the edge of their spirit. Overhead, the sky began to shift. Clouds gathered, strange and dark, swirling as if drawn by her breath. The crowd barely noticed, too lost in their lust for cruelty, until a sharp crash erupted on the far side of the square. A chariot overturned. The horses screamed, thrashing wildly, breaking free of their reins. The crowd scattered, shoving, yelling. Chaos rippled through the air like a living thing. And in that single heartbeat of distraction, Aurelia moved. The chains around her wrists clanged violently as she surged to her feet, the whip barely missing her as she ducked and ran. The guards shouted, but she was faster than they expected. Years of labor, years of endurance had forged strength into her bones. She tore through the chaos, breath ragged, heart pounding. The ground blistered beneath her bare feet, but she didn't stop. People screamed behind her, not because of her, but because the storm was coming. A storm no one understood. The first drop of rain fell like a blessing. Then another. And another. Within moments, the sky opened wide, and the heavens wept for her. The marketplace blurred behind her as she ran, chains still clattering around her wrists, metallic ghosts chasing her freedom. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stop. The city walls loomed ahead, ancient and cold, carved with symbols of power long forgotten. Somehow, she made it through a broken archway that led to the outskirts, the part of Rome the powerful pretended didn't exist. The ruins. Once a temple of the moon goddess, now a skeleton of what it had been, pillars cracked, vines crawling across sacred stone. The world there was quiet, almost reverent, as if holding its breath. Aurelia stumbled inside, collapsing against a fallen column. The rain dripped from her hair, sliding down her neck, mixing with the blood on her arms. Her lungs burned, but she smiled again, faint, fragile, but real. She had escaped. For now. The silence pressed around her like a living presence. She could hear every drop of rain, every shift of wind, every echo of her heartbeat against the hollow ruins. The air smelled of wet stone and memories. And then, a whisper. Soft. Barely human. Aurelia. Her head jerked up, eyes darting into the shadows. The sound came from nowhere, and everywhere. No one should have known her name. No one should have been here. Her breath caught. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Aurelia. The voice was neither kind nor cruel. It was old. It was knowing. It carried a weight that pressed against her chest, not with fear, but with recognition. Something deep inside her stirred, that same hum beneath her skin, now stronger, brighter. Her palms began to tingle. When she looked down, faint lines of light traced across them, silver, alive, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She gasped and clutched her hands to her chest, trembling. No, not again. But the power didn't listen. It never did. The rain poured harder, like the heavens themselves were feeding it. The whisper turned to a murmur, then a low, melodic hum. The air trembled. The torches that had long since died in the temple flickered to life, burning cold white. The walls seemed to breathe, ancient carvings shifting, forming the image of a wolf howling at a broken moon. Aurelia's knees buckled. She fell against the stone floor, eyes wide. "What are you?" she whispered. The wind moved through the ruins, brushing her face like a hand. And in that touch, she felt it, not an answer, but a memory. The scent of pine. The sound of distant howls. The warmth of belonging. Her heart twisted. That world was gone. She'd been stripped of her pack, her home, her name. Her father's voice, once proud, had been the one to condemn her. "You are not fit to carry our bloodline. You bring ruin." He'd sold her. For gold. For peace. For shame. She pressed her hands to her face, biting back the sob rising in her throat. The rain masked her tears, but not the sound that broke free, a sound somewhere between grief and fury. The air shimmered. Her palms flared brighter. The silver mark spread to her wrists, her arms. The glow reflected off the wet stone, painting the ruins in shifting light. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And then, just as suddenly as it came, the light dimmed. Aurelia slumped forward, exhausted. The rain softened to a drizzle. The whispers faded into silence. Only her breathing remained. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had lost its grip. Somewhere beyond the ruins, thunder rolled. She could feel the world watching her, unseen eyes hidden behind the veil of storm clouds. For the first time in years, she wasn't surrounded by chains or men shouting commands. She was surrounded by silence, and that was almost worse. Because silence left room for memory. She saw the faces of those who'd mocked her, the ones who'd turned their backs when her powers began to show. She saw her father, proud and pitiless, handing her over to the slavers as though she were a coin to be traded. She saw the man she once called friend, the one who laughed as they dragged her away. Every betrayal had carved itself into her soul. Every wound had taught her how to survive. But this loneliness, this was a different kind of pain. She leaned back against the cold stone, closing her eyes. The world had stripped her of everything, family, pack, worth. And yet, beneath all the loss, something stubborn still lived in her. A quiet defiance. Aurelia didn't know it yet, but the chains that once bound her body had only driven her closer to the power waiting within. She'd been told she was nothing. That she would never shift. That her blood was cursed. But destiny has a strange sense of irony. It often hides the fiercest fire inside those the world tries to extinguish. Outside, the storm grew restless again. Lightning cracked across the horizon, illuminating the city walls in flashes of white fire. And for the briefest moment, Aurelia saw something in the distance, a shadow moving through the rain, steady, deliberate, powerful. It wasn't human. It wasn't entirely wolf either. It was something in between. Watching her. She froze, heart hammering. The air grew still. The scent that drifted toward her was unlike anything she'd ever known, pine and smoke and something wild. It made her wolf stir inside, restless, yearning. Then, it was gone. The rain swallowed the moment, leaving her alone again with her heartbeat and her fear. But deep down, a spark had lit within her, one that no storm could wash away. She didn't know what waited beyond the ruins. She didn't know if she'd survive the night. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never kneel again. Not to kings. Not to fate. Not even to the gods. Because whatever was coming, whatever was calling her name in the shadows, it was part of her now. And it was waking up. If you believe every soul deserves love, if stories like this stir your spirit, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn. The wind outside the ruins shifted, carrying the scent of rain and smoke. Aurelia's breath hitched as the cloaked figure stepped closer, each movement deliberate, controlled, like a predator careful not to spook wounded prey. His robes dragged against the ancient stones, whispering secrets of forgotten battles. A silver band wrapped across his eyes gleamed faintly in the dim light, but there was no hesitation in his steps. He didn't move like a blind man. He moved like a wolf who could see through the soul instead of the eyes. The air around him changed. It thickened, pulsed, alive with dominance that stirred the wolf sleeping inside her. She could smell it, wild pine and iron, mountain storm and blood. The kind of scent that clung to the earth after a kill. It filled her lungs, made her knees weaken, made her instincts scream to bow and flee at the same time. He stopped just before her, close enough that the warmth of his presence pressed against her cold skin. "Aurelia of the lost bloodline," he said again, his voice low and rough, like thunder traveling across old stone. She stiffened. That name, her true name, had been buried for years. "How do you know me?" He tilted his head slightly, as though listening to something beyond her words. "The world remembers those who are not meant to fade," he murmured. "And you, Aurelia, were never meant to fade." His hand reached out slowly, stopping just before her wrist. The faintest brush of his fingers grazed her skin. Power crackled between them. Her wolf lunged against her chest, snarling, desperate to rise. She felt heat bloom under her skin, spreading from that single touch. For a heartbeat, she forgot the chains, the blood, the humiliation. There was only the steady sound of his breathing, slow, deep, patient. "I mean no harm," he said, softer this time. "You've been hunted long enough." Aurelia wanted to believe him. But trust was a luxury she'd been stripped of long ago. She pulled back, her chains rattling against the cracked temple floor. "You should leave. They'll come looking for me." "They already are," he said simply. Then, with a strange calm, he added, "But they won't find you." Something about his certainty unsettled her. "Why help me? You don't even know who I am." He smiled faintly, just a lift of one corner of his mouth, enough to make her chest tighten. "Because I was once blind too," he said, touching the band across his eyes. "Not by sight, but by pride." The wind howled through the broken pillars, stirring the ashes on the ground. The temple's ancient carvings caught the fading light, and for a moment, it seemed the moon goddess herself watched them. Aurelia's guard faltered. There was something about him, something wounded but unyielding. His scars, the deep ones along his arms and throat, spoke of wars fought not for glory but for survival. She saw the faint marks of chains on his wrists. He was no stranger to captivity. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated, as if the name itself was dangerous. "Kaelin." The name rolled through her like a storm, foreign, powerful, laced with something she couldn't define. "Kaelin," she repeated quietly. The moment stretched between them, silent but full of meaning neither could speak. Outside, thunder grumbled in the distance. When the first drops of rain began to fall, Kaelin reached for her again. We can't stay here. The scent of blood will draw hunters. She flinched at his touch, but he didn't force her. He simply waited. That patience, it was what undid her. No alpha she'd ever known had offered her time to decide. They commanded. They demanded. But this one, he waited, steady as stone, as if he already knew she'd follow. Aurelia's breath trembled as she nodded. Where will we go? Somewhere the moon can't reach, he said quietly, and helped her stand. As he pulled her up, her knees nearly gave way. His arm caught her waist, strong but careful, his body heat seeping into her cold skin. She hated how good it felt, how safe. The chains around her wrists clinked softly as he examined them. With a sharp tug, the metal snapped. His strength was quiet but devastating. Her heart pounded. You're not just an alpha. No, he said, his voice almost a growl. Not anymore. The rain thickened. The temple stones glistened as water poured through the cracks in the roof. They stepped into the open, the storm swallowing them. Lightning flared, casting silver light over his face. Beneath the blindfold, faint symbols glowed, ancient runes of protection. Aurelia stared. Who marked you? Kaelin didn't answer. He just turned toward the woods. We need to move. They descended the temple steps, mud slick beneath their feet. Aurelia stumbled once, her body weak from exhaustion, and he caught her again. Each time he touched her, her wolf responded, pressing against her skin, whispering that she knew this man, that her soul remembered his. She pushed the feeling away. The forest swallowed them, dark and endless. The sounds of the city faded behind them, replaced by the low hum of nocturnal life, crickets, wind, distant thunder. Kaelin led the way, moving with uncanny awareness despite his blindness. How can you see? She finally asked. I don't, he said. But I sense what's meant to be seen. His answer made no sense, but it felt true. The rain eased to a drizzle. The air grew cooler. Aurelia's wounds throbbed with each step, but she refused to slow. Her pride wouldn't allow it. Still, Kaelin must have noticed her pain. Without a word, he took her hand and guided it to his shoulder. Lean if you need to. I don't need. You do, he interrupted gently. And there's no shame in it. Something in his tone broke through her resistance. She let her weight rest slightly against him. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to be helped. When they finally reached a small clearing, Kaelin stopped. The moonlight broke through the clouds, spilling silver across his bandaged eyes. He tilted his head toward the sky. She's watching, he said softly. Aurelia followed his gaze, though her chest ached at the thought. The moon goddess abandoned me long ago. Kaelin's jaw tightened. She doesn't abandon. She tests. Tests, she whispered. By making me a slave? By letting them call me cursed? He turned toward her, rain running down his scarred face. Do you think the moonlight touches only the worthy? No, Aurelia. It touches those who can bear the dark. She stared at him, unable to speak. His words struck something deep, something she'd buried under years of pain. For a long moment, there was only silence. The forest seemed to listen. Then, faintly, he smiled again, though it didn't reach his lips. You still have fire in you. Good. You'll need it. For what? She asked. He glanced into the woods, his head tilting slightly as if he heard something she couldn't. They're coming. Before she could question him, the first howl pierced the night. Low, guttural, filled with hunger. Aurelia's heart leapt. Wolves. But not free ones. The sound carried the metallic tang of control, collars forged in dark magic. Hunters, she breathed. No, he said grimly. Worse. From the trees, shapes emerged, massive wolves with eyes glowing red. Their fur was matted, their movements sharp and unnatural. Bound wolves, enslaved by sorcery. Aurelia's blood ran cold. I've seen them before. I know, Kalen said quietly. They came for me once too. He stepped forward, his blindfold gleaming under the lightning. The ground trembled as his power surged. The wolves hesitated. Stay behind me, he ordered. She wanted to protest, but her body obeyed before her mind caught up. The energy rolling off him was raw, electric. Even the storm seemed to pause, waiting. When the first wolf lunged, Kalen moved faster than sight. His hand met its throat midair, crushing it in one motion. The others attacked in a blur of fur and teeth, but he was a force of nature, silent, precise, lethal. Each movement flowed into the next, a dance of death and grace. Aurelia watched, stunned. He fought like a creature who'd lived centuries, as if his body remembered every battle ever fought under the moon. Then she felt it, the pull in her chest. Her wolf wanted out. Her pulse quickened, her bones ached with the need to shift. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, fighting it back. She couldn't. Not yet. Kalen turned briefly toward her. Don't hold it in, he growled. You'll tear yourself apart. I can't, she shouted. They'll know what I am. He tore through another wolf and faced her, eyes burning beneath the silver band. They already do. Something inside her snapped. The chains, the fear, the humiliation, all of it erupted in a single heartbeat. Her body convulsed, bones shifting, skin tearing, light exploding beneath her flesh. The wolf burst forth, white fur streaked with silver, eyes burning like liquid moonlight. The forest gasped with her. She landed beside him, powerful and alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Her howl joined his, and the sound split the night like thunder. Together they moved, two halves of a storm. The bound wolves faltered, overwhelmed by their combined energy. One by one, they fell. When the last body hit the earth, silence returned. Aurelia's chest heaved. Her fur was soaked in rain and blood. Kalen stood a few steps away, unmoving, his breathing steady. The silver band had cracked, revealing faint golden eyes beneath, glowing, ancient, and terribly sad. She shifted back slowly, trembling, the cool air biting at her skin. Who are you really? She whispered. He looked at her, rain glinting off the broken band. Someone who failed the first time the moon called, he said quietly. And someone who won't fail again. The forest seemed to bow around him. Aurelia stepped closer, her heart pounding not with fear, but with something she couldn't yet name. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel cursed. Kalen turned away, his voice low. Come. We have miles to go before dawn finds us. And as they disappeared into the forest, side by side, the storm began to clear, leaving behind only the faint glow of moonlight on their path. Because fate, once set in motion, had begun to turn again. The ruins were silent except for the low hiss of wind slipping through cracks in the marble columns. The moon hung half-shrouded by drifting clouds, spilling pale light across the broken temple floor where Aurelia sat, her back pressed to a cold wall still faintly warm from the day's sun. Her breath came shallow, trembling, the taste of ash and salt still clinging to her tongue. She had run so far she could barely remember the roads that carried her here. The stones beneath her palms seemed to pulse faintly with memory, echoes of chants and prayers once offered to gods who no longer listened. Now the temple belonged only to ghosts and fugitives. The man sat opposite her, his body still cloaked though the firelight revealed the faint glimmer of scars running along his forearms. The blindfold across his eyes caught the flicker of orange flame. He hadn't spoken since they arrived, and that silence pressed on her heavier than the chains that once bound her wrists. For a long time, she watched him. Every movement of his hand, slow, deliberate, precise, betrayed strength. But there was something else in him too, something caged and sorrowful. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost hesitant. You should rest. The patrols won't come this far tonight. Aurelia's throat tightened. Rest. The word tasted foreign. She didn't remember the last time she'd slept without fear clawing at her chest. Her voice cracked when she answered. They called me cursed, she said, staring into the flames. Said I brought ruin wherever I walked. He didn't respond, only leaned closer, his head slightly tilted as if listening to the pain beneath her words rather than the words themselves. She drew her knees close, the rough linen of her torn dress scraping her skin. My father sold me. Said I was no use to the pack. That I couldn't give them heirs. He traded me like grain in the market, to pay off his debts. Her breath caught. He didn't even look at me when they dragged me away. The fire crackled, small bursts of ember spiraling upward like tiny stars trying to escape. Her tears followed them in silence. I didn't know what was happening to me then, she continued. I thought it was punishment. Every time I cried, the air shimmered. When I touched the ground, light would bleed through the dust. The others saw it and called me unnatural. I didn't understand it myself. The man's fingers stilled against the stone. The faintest tremor passed through his shoulders. Silver light, he murmured. Your bloodline was marked long before your birth. She blinked, startled by the certainty in his tone. How do you know that? He turned his face toward her. Even blindfolded, it felt as though he saw her more clearly than anyone ever had. Because power like that doesn't appear by chance. She looked away, fighting the sting behind her eyes. Power? It destroyed everything I loved. A gust of wind swept through the ruins, dimming the fire for a heartbeat. In the flicker of shadows, his expression hardened. No, he said softly. It revealed what they truly were. For a long moment neither spoke. The night stretched wide around them, heavy with unsaid truths. Then she whispered, You talk like someone who's lost too. His jaw tightened. Loss is the only teacher worth listening to. She studied him, the way his hands rested on his knees, steady but tense, as if holding back something immense. The scent of pine and iron clung to him, old and untamed. He was no ordinary wanderer. Who are you really? She asked. He smiled faintly, a smile with no joy in it. A man who once thought sight made him wise. Her brow furrowed. And now? Now, he said, I see more in darkness than I ever did in light. The words sank deep, stirring something fragile in her chest. The fire crackled again, casting soft gold on his jawline, catching the faint silver thread woven into his cloak. Aurelia wrapped her arms around herself. You don't act like a slave, she said quietly. Or a beggar. I've been both, he replied. And worse. His voice carried the weight of memory, the sound of doors closing and armies marching away. There was a time I thought I could save everyone by ruling over them. I was wrong. A shiver crawled down her spine. She didn't know why his confession struck so close, only that it did. You carry shame too, she whispered. He turned his face toward the fire. I've seen kingdoms burn for pride, he said simply. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, thick with grief, recognition, and something unspoken that neither dared to name. The night deepened. Somewhere beyond the ruins, wolves howled, a distant, lonely chorus carried by the wind. Aurelia closed her eyes and listened. For the first time in years, the sound didn't fill her with fear. She spoke again, softer now. When they banished me, they marked me with silver ash. Said no pack would ever take me. They didn't know I'd already seen death. I watched them burn the forest that sheltered us. I smelled my mother's fur when it turned to smoke. Her voice broke, but she didn't stop. They said I was barren. That I had no place among wolves who could build legacies. They didn't see what I carried, something they couldn't touch, something that scared them. The man tilted his head, his blindfold catching the faint blue of moonlight. What did you carry? She stared into the fire. Hope, she said finally. And I hated myself for it. He inhaled slowly, as though breathing in her pain. Then, without a word, he reached into the folds of his cloak and pulled out a small vial. The glass shimmered faintly, catching the glow of the flames. Inside, silver liquid swirled like mercury. "Drink," he said. She hesitated. "What is it?" "Peace, for a while." Her hand trembled as she took it. The liquid was warm when it touched her lips, sliding down her throat like light made tangible. For a moment, she saw flashes, visions of wolves running under twin moons, of cities built from crystal and flame, of an empire hidden beneath mountain roots. When her vision cleared, she found him watching her, not with eyes, but with something deeper. "You see it now," he murmured. "The world that still remembers your name." Aurelia's breath caught. "What are you?" "Someone bound by the same curse you carry," he said. "I hid from it behind crowns and gold until blindness forced me to face what I'd become." Her pulse quickened. "You're no ordinary man." He leaned forward, voice low. "And you are no ordinary wolf." The fire flared suddenly, as if answering his words. For an instant, silver flames danced in her palms again, wild, untamed, beautiful. She gasped and closed her fists, but the light didn't fade immediately. He didn't move. "Don't fear it," he said. "Power doesn't choose the worthy. It creates them." Tears stung her eyes. "You sound like someone who's already lost everything." "I have," he said quietly. "That's why I know what it costs to survive." The weight of those words settled between them. She could feel his pain, different from hers, but cut from the same cloth. Two souls broken in different ways, sitting in the ruins of what used to be sacred. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. The fire dimmed to a faint glow, painting their faces with amber shadows. Aurelia looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you could start again, would you?" He turned his head slightly toward her. "Only if the gods promised I wouldn't make the same mistakes," he said. Then, after a pause, "But they never promise that." Something in her chest shifted, like the first crack in a wall that's held for too long. She wanted to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. So she just watched him. The blindfold. The stillness. The way his presence filled the silence without needing to move. Finally she said, "I don't even know your name." He hesitated. Then his lips curved faintly, almost reluctant. "Kaelin." The name fell between them like a spark, quiet but alive. She repeated it softly, as if testing how it felt on her tongue. "Kaelin." A breeze swept through the temple, lifting her hair and scattering ash into the air. The fire burned low, silver light flickering against his unseen eyes. Neither spoke again, but something fundamental had changed. The distance between them was no longer filled with fear, it was filled with recognition. Outside, dawn crept slow and uncertain across the horizon. Aurelia didn't sleep, but for the first time since her exile, she didn't wish to disappear. She sat beside a man who was both stranger and mirror, and in his silence she found the faint outline of something she'd forgotten, belonging. The first light of morning touched the ruins, painting the broken columns gold. She turned to him once more, but he had already risen, standing tall against the glow, cloak rippling in the wind. "Where will you go?" she asked. He faced the distant hills. "Where I'm needed." "And me?" His voice softened. "You'll know when the time comes." He started walking, slow and sure, his steps echoing on the stone. She watched him until the mist swallowed his figure. Her fingers brushed the vial he'd left behind, still warm in her palm. Somewhere inside her, something stirred, a flicker of silver light under her skin, not pain this time but promise. And though she didn't understand it yet, that moment in the ruins had already altered the course of both their fates. Under the silver moon, the forest trembles like a living thing, every leaf whispering secrets of gods and monsters long forgotten. The wind coils around them, heavy with power, heavy with memory. Kaelin stands beside her, still as carved stone, his golden eyes fixed on the trembling reflection in the sacred spring. The vision had already begun to fade, but its echo lingers in the air, "She who was sold shall rule the sold." Lyria's breath quivers in her throat. The words crawl beneath her skin, heavy with destiny she never asked for. Her hands burn faintly, the glow refusing to fade. She dips her fingers into the spring, but the water recoils from her touch as if alive. "What does it mean?" she whispers, voice raw from disbelief. Kaelin's gaze doesn't leave her. "It means the old gods haven't forgotten their promises. And they haven't forgiven our kind for breaking them." The forest exhales, a long, low rumble that almost sounds like a growl. Somewhere beyond the trees, something answers, distant, deep, ancient. Lyria's wolf stirs violently inside her, restless, aware of something vast pressing at the edge of her soul. Kaelin steps closer. The space between them tightens, charged, magnetic. His scent, pine, smoke, and storm, grounds her for a fleeting second. But behind his composure lies turmoil, a buried fear clawing to the surface. "You were hidden for a reason," he says softly. The Leakin prophecy spoke of a woman born in blood, abandoned by her pack, marked by flame. They said she would awaken the bond between the Alpha Kings and the lost gods. She turns toward him sharply. "You talk as if you've seen it." "I have." His voice drops, low, dangerous. "Because I was there when the prophecy was sealed." The confession hits her like a strike. She stares at him, unable to move. "That's impossible. That was centuries ago." He doesn't answer. The firelight catches his eyes, and for the first time she sees the truth flicker behind them, the weight of endless years, the kind of grief only immortality could carve. "What are you?" she breathes. Kaelin lowers his head slightly. "The last of the firstborn. The one cursed to walk blind until the chosen flame returns." Her pulse races. The wind tightens around them, the forest holding its breath. "And now that I've appeared?" He looks at her as if the question itself hurts. "Now my curse ends. And yours begins." The silence stretches between them, heavy with revelation and dread. Lyria takes a step back, heart hammering. "You think this is fate?" "I know it is," he says. "The spring doesn't lie. The gods never speak without purpose." Her laughter breaks through, short, bitter. "Then their purpose is cruel." She turns away, her glow dimming. "They chose the wrong girl." But Kaelin moves, his hand gripping her wrist before she can retreat. The moment their skin touches, the spring erupts. The water glows like molten glass, reflecting memories not their own, a burning citadel, wolves kneeling before a throne of silver fire, a woman crowned in flame and shadow. Her face is Lyria's, though older, fiercer, divine. Kaelin's breath catches. "You were reborn." The vision fades, but the bond between them doesn't. His thumb brushes her wrist, the heat of his touch igniting something deeper than fear, recognition, ancient and primal. Lyria's voice trembles. "You think I'm her reincarnation." "I don't think," he murmurs. "I feel it. Every part of me does. My wolf hasn't held for centuries, until you." Her heart betrays her, one single, pounding beat that echoes in her chest like a drum of fate. She wants to pull away, to deny him, to run from the weight of prophecy, but his presence anchors her, his scent, his warmth, his pain, all too real, too human, too impossible. But the ground beneath them shifts. The air grows colder. The forest that once hummed with life now stirs with something darker. Kaelin tenses. "They've found us." She looks toward the trees, but all she sees are shifting shadows, movements without form. Then the howls come, low, guttural, echoing through the forest like an omen. Lyria's wolf rises inside her, claws scraping against her soul. "Who are they?" Kaelin's gaze hardens. "Hunters. Sent by the High Council." "The High Council? They're just a myth." "So was the chosen flame," he replies. From the tree line, figures emerge, tall, cloaked, their eyes gleaming red under the moon. Not wolves. Not humans. Something in between, feral creations bound to dark magic. Their growls blend into the storm's wind, each step in sync, each breath reeking of blood and obedience. Kalen's blindfold is gone now, and with it, his disguise. His aura expands, vast and commanding, wrapping around Lyria like a shield. The ground trembles beneath his presence, the air bending, alive with power. He moves forward, his voice cold as iron. You dare trespass upon Luper's veil? The leader hisses. The council decrees the flame must be extinguished before it burns the world again. Lyria steps beside him, defiance rising in her chest despite the tremor in her hands. Then let them burn trying. Her palms blaze silver. Flames curl around her fingers, not of heat but of spirit, bending light itself. The beasts recoil. Kalen glances at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. Control it, he murmurs. Don't let it control you. I'm trying, she snaps, breath unsteady. It doesn't want to stop. He steps closer, his voice low, guiding. Then give it purpose. The first beast lunges, claws slicing through the air. Kalen moves faster than thought, his form blurring, his wolf erupting beneath his skin. Bones shift, muscles stretch, a deep, thunderous growl shakes the earth. His transformation is seamless, terrifying and beautiful. Lyria stands her ground, letting instinct take over. The fire doesn't burn her, it becomes her. Silver ribbons of flame coil around her body, tracing her veins like celestial threads. When the next creature leaps, she meets it midair, her hand slicing through its chest, a flash of light, a burst of ash. Kalen's golden eyes meet hers through the chaos, wild, proud, protective. Every movement they make sinks, their rhythm natural, their bond unspoken. The battle becomes a dance, blood and fire, claw and light, prophecy and fate entwined. When the last of the beasts fall, silence returns, thick, humming with aftermath. The forest sighs, as if relieved. The spring ripples again, faintly glowing, whispering in an ancient tongue neither can fully understand. Lyria sways, exhaustion hitting her in waves. Kalen catches her before she falls. His arms tighten around her, steady, strong. She feels his heartbeat against her ear, rapid, fierce, alive. You shouldn't have done that alone, he murmurs. She looks up at him, her lips trembling into a faint smile. I wasn't alone. For a moment, time slows. The storm quiets. His gaze softens, the golden heat dimming to something tender. His hand brushes a strand of hair from her face, lingering a little too long. You don't understand, he says quietly. If the council knows you've awakened the flame, they'll come with more than beasts next time. They'll send kings. Then let them come, she whispers. I'm done running. He almost smiles, almost. Spoken like a queen. But inside, the words twist like a blade. Because he knows what the prophecy truly means, and what it will cost her. They travel again before dawn, leaving the ruins behind. The forest thins into misty plains where the air hums with strange frequencies. Kalen walks ahead, his jaw tight, his silence heavy. Lyria follows, torn between gratitude and fear. Every step brings her closer to something vast and inevitable. Why didn't you tell me sooner, she finally asks. Because once you know, there's no turning back. And you think I'd run? I think you'd try to save everyone else first, he replies, glancing back at her. Even if it meant losing yourself. Her breath catches. Somehow, he already knows her heart. As the first light touches the horizon, the ruins of an ancient temple appear ahead, carved in black stone, half swallowed by vines. The entrance glows faintly, as if waiting for her. Kalen stops, his eyes narrowing. This is where it began. The prophecy? No, he says quietly. The war. The temple doors groan open as they approach. Inside, murals tell stories older than memory, wolves crowned in flame, gods descending in fury, blood turning rivers red. At the center, a stone altar glimmers with residual magic. When Lyria touches it, her vision fractures. She sees herself, but not as she is. A crown of silver fire rests on her head. Kalen kneels before her, bound by chains of light. His voice echoes through her mind, raw and desperate. You can't save me without becoming what they feared. She jerks back, gasping. I saw you, chained. Begging me to stop. Kaelin's expression darkens. Then the gods have shown you the price. What price? He hesitates, then steps closer, his hand finding hers. To rule beside the unseen king means to bear the curse of his throne. To keep the balance, one must lose themselves. She looks up at him, her eyes burning with tears. Then why help me? Because fate doesn't care about fairness, he whispers. But I do. Their hands remain entwined as the temple hums, the ancient power stirring once more. The air grows dense with energy, the gods watching, waiting. Lyria's flames pulse faintly beneath her skin, answering the silent call. Somewhere far away, the High Council feels the tremor. The awakening has begun. And in the space between heartbeats, destiny shifts, the hunter becomes protector, the cursed becomes chosen, and the blind Alpha begins to see not with eyes, but with love. The world beyond Lupra's veil will soon tremble, for the chosen flame has returned, and prophecy burns anew. Under the blood moon, the world seems to hold its breath. The forest, once whispering with divine hum, falls silent, as if mourning before the slaughter. Lyria stands by the ancient temple, her pulse echoing the tremor of the earth. The air thickens, iron and storm lacing the night. She knows what's coming before she hears the first war horn. From the distance, armor glints red under the moonlight. Torches move like veins of fire through the trees. The scent of wolves, soldiers, and rage thickens the air. The Empire's banners, crimson and gold, bleed across the clearing. At their head rides Marcus Baron, heir of a broken lineage, and Kaelin's cousin by blood but rival by heart. His presence is poison, smiling, assured, cruel in its beauty. King Kaelin, Marcus calls, voice slicing the night. Hiding behind myths now, cousin? Or behind your latest mistake? Lyria looks between them, confusion shadowing her fear. What does he mean? Marcus dismounts, the earth trembling under the weight of his armor. He didn't tell you, did he? His grin widens. Your savior isn't the wanderer you think he is. He's the king of lichens. The one who enslaved half the packs you fled from. The very crown that branded you unworthy. The words strike like blades. Lyria's heart stutters, her breath faltering. She turns toward Kaelin, searching his face for denial, for truth, for anything, but his silence is deafening. Tell me he's lying, she whispers. Kaelin's jaw tightens. The blood moon reflects in his eyes, molten and sharp. I never wanted you to see me through what I was, he says quietly. Only through what I became. Her voice cracks. So it's true. Marcus laughs. You see now, little flame? Even gods have kings to kneel to. He's no savior. He's the beast who burned empires to ash. The soldiers move forward in formation, silver chains in their hands, forged for capturing divine blood. The rival alphas snarl beside them, wolves with eyes of greed and fear. Lyria steps back, her heart thundering. You lied to me. I protected you, Kaelin answers, his tone low, almost pleading. Until I could no longer hide what you'd have to face. By deceiving me, she snaps, her power flickering around her palms. By making me trust you? By keeping you alive, he says. The ground shudders under the weight of an approaching army. Marcus draws his blade, serrated steel, glinting with runes. Enough sentiment. Hand her over, cousin. The Empire wants the girl who bears the flame. The god's mistake must be corrected. Kaelin steps forward, his power unfurling in waves, golden light rippling through the air like heat over fire. You'll touch her over my corpse. Marcus smirks. That can be arranged. The first clash begins like a storm breaking. Chains whistle through the air. Arrows streak like comets. Wolves shift mid-leap, bodies warping, claws slicing, fur bristling with the scent of blood. Kaelin meets them head-on, his form blurring into motion, strength rippling through every strike. His claws tear through steel like parchment. Every movement is precision, every breath a war cry. Lyria freezes for a moment, watching the world unravel. The temple behind her trembles with divine energy, responding to the chaos. Sparks flare from her hands unbidden, her magic rising with her pulse. Then a scream, one of the wolves, impaled on a guard's spear. The scent of burning fur fills the air. Something inside her snaps. The silver flames burst forth before she even wills it. The air ignites. Soldiers recoil, blinded by light. The forest around them turns white and gold, every leaf glowing as though heaven itself descended in fury. Kaelin looks up, stunned, as the flames spiral around her, not destroying, but cleansing. The earth drinks the light, the sky splits with thunder. Lyria, he shouts through the roar. Control it. The gods will hear you. I don't care. Her voice cracks, both fury and pain. I told them to stop. But no one does. The wolves fight, the soldiers scream, and Marcus charges through the storm with a grin carved from madness. Kaelin intercepts him mid-strike. Their blades meet, the sound like thunder splitting stone. Sparks rain between them as claws and steel collide. Marcus's laughter is cruel. You always wanted to rule beside a goddess, he taunts, pressing harder. Now she'll die for your vanity. Kaelin's growl deepens, raw and ancient. You know nothing of her. Marcus twists his blade, catching Kaelin off guard. The edge slices deep into his shoulder, blood spilling dark and hot. But Kaelin doesn't fall, he surges forward, knocking Marcus back with a blow that shatters armor. Lyria sees the blood. Her flames falter for a heartbeat, horror replacing rage. Kaelin. He glances back just as another soldier lunges toward her. Instinct overtakes him. He moves faster than breath, between her and the strike. The blade finds him first. Time fractures. She hears the steel sink in. Feels his body jolt. Sees his eyes widen, not in pain, but in relief, as though this was always the end he chose. No, she screams, catching him as he falls. The sword slides free, crimson spilling into her hands. The light around her flares uncontrollably, waves of silver fire devouring the battlefield. The guards stumble, blinded, the wolves retreat. Marcus stumbles to his feet, his armor scorched. Pathetic, he spits. He dies for a curse. But even as he retreats into the trees, his eyes hold a flicker of fear. The prophecy is awake. Lyria barely hears him leave. She's on her knees, cradling Kaelin's head against her lap. His blood stains her fingers, hot and slick, seeping into the dirt. Why didn't you tell me, she whispers, voice shaking, breaking apart. His breathing is shallow, the edge of death shadowing his face. Because, he struggles for breath, his hand trembling as he touches her cheek. I needed to know if you'd see me, when I couldn't see you. Her tears fall onto his lips, mixing with blood. The flames dim, softening to a glow that wraps them both. Don't talk, she pleads. You'll be fine. You're too stubborn to die. A faint, broken laugh escapes him. You sound like the queen you were meant to be. She shakes her head, sobs tearing through her chest. Don't you dare say goodbye. But his hand is already slipping from hers. His golden eyes flicker once more, filled not with fear, but with peace. Lyria, the gods chose right. Then the light leaves them. The dawn rises slow, pale and cruel. The battlefield lies in ruins, charred trees, fallen soldiers, wolves turned to ash. The spring nearby glows faintly, whispering still. The prophecy hums in the wind. Lyria kneels alone, her body trembling, her spirit torn open. Around her, the world is silent. The only sound left is her heartbeat, and the faint echo of his voice in her memory. She presses her hand against his wound, her flames flickering to life again, softer now, mournful. The energy flows into him, desperate, pleading. Please, she whispers. Don't leave me like them did. Not you. The flames answer her grief, forming symbols in the air, ancient runes that shimmer, then fade into his skin. The gods are listening. The air grows still. The ground hums. His chest rises faintly. Once. Twice. Then stillness. Her scream breaks the dawn. The gods, watching, do not intervene. The prophecy demanded sacrifice, and they have claimed it. But the story does not end there. Lyria's flames do not die with him. They turn inward, searing her veins, marking her as more than chosen. Something ancient opens inside her, a divine fury, silent and absolute. Her tears dry. Her gaze lifts toward the horizon where Marcus fled. Her voice, when it comes, is no longer soft. It is the voice of a queen reborn through loss. If the world wants war, she whispers, then the world will burn for him. The forest answers, every leaf trembling in submission. And beneath her palms, Kaelin's blood begins to glow. Under the weight of 1,000 shadows, they disappear into the mountain's embrace. The cave mouth yawns open like the throat of some ancient beast, swallowing them both into darkness that glows faintly blue with veins of moonfire buried deep in the stone. The air hums with quiet magic. Old, sacred, and alive. It smells of damp earth and silver light. Lyria walks ahead, her hand brushing the wall as if to steady herself, though what truly trembles is not her body but her spirit. Behind her, Kaelin moves slower. His wound is bound, but pain still drips through his breath in faint, ragged waves. Every step he takes leaves behind a whisper of strength he can barely afford to lose. When she stops, the faint sound of water echoes, slow droplets falling into a pool of liquid crystal. The glow reflects against her skin, catching her face in ghostly shimmer. She turns back to him, her voice quiet but steady. Sit. You'll reopen it again if you keep pretending you're invincible. He exhales, half in exhaustion, half in surrender. You forget I'm a king. Pretending is all I know. Not tonight, she replies, kneeling beside the pool. The water glows faintly brighter as she dips a cloth into it, wringing it out with slow, careful fingers. Tonight, you're a man who nearly died because he thought saving me was more important than saving himself. Kaelin watches her in silence. The faint light touches her face, silver flames dancing in her irises, the mark of the goddess flickering faintly on her palms. There is no crown on her head, no armor on her shoulders, and yet he feels the weight of royalty in her stillness. She presses the cloth to his wound. He doesn't flinch. The warmth spreads, moonfire working its way into his veins, knitting torn flesh together with ancient patience. But it's her hands, not the magic, that heal the deeper wounds. For a long time, neither speaks. The mountain hums softly, a lullaby of stone and divinity. Only their breaths fill the silence, sinking slowly until the rhythm becomes one. Then, softly, she breaks it. When you said you needed to know if I'd see you when you couldn't see me, what did you mean? He looks at her, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Everyone looks at a king and sees power. When I hid my sight, I wondered if anyone would still look and see a soul. Her hand stills over his shoulder. And did I? His voice lowers, almost a whisper. You saw more than I wanted to show. She swallows, feeling the truth settle deep in her chest. There's something raw in his tone, something that unravels the walls she built from pain and shame. She shifts slightly closer, the cave light catching the faint tremor in her hand as she rests it against his arm. When I saw you, I didn't see blindness or weakness. I saw someone who carried too much alone. A faint breath leaves him, shaky and unguarded. You sound like someone who knows what that feels like. Her laugh is quiet, bitter. I was born knowing. My father sold me when my power frightened him. My mother turned her face away as if I were already dead. Every day after that, I learned to survive by pretending I didn't feel. He tilts his head toward her, his voice roughened with emotion. And now? Now I feel everything, she admits. And it terrifies me. He reaches up, his fingers tracing the edge of her jaw, hesitant, reverent. You think love is weakness. She meets his gaze, her eyes reflecting moonlight and pain. Isn't it? The last time I trusted, it destroyed everything I was. Then let me show you, he says softly, that it can also rebuild what was broken. For a moment, neither breathes. The air between them thickens, heavy with words unspoken, with hearts learning to beat in unison again. Her wolf stirs inside her, restless, recognizing something ancient in him, something her blood remembers even if her mind does not. The pull between them feels divine, ordained, and yet human enough to hurt. He lowers his forehead against hers. When they saw blindness, he whispers, they pitied me. But you looked without judgment. Her breath catches. The touch is electric, soft, trembling, inevitable. Their hearts race in sync, their shared silence heavier than any vow. She doesn't pull away. For the first time, she lets the walls crumble, lets herself exist in this fragile, impossible peace. The fire nearby flickers, painting their faces in amber and silver. His hand moves to hers, fingers brushing lightly before settling, firm and certain. She feels the calluses of his past, the tremor of vulnerability he tries to hide. You shouldn't trust me so easily, she murmurs. I haven't, he says. But I want to. The honesty cuts through the air sharper than any blade. Then, as if the gods themselves resent their brief reprieve, a sound breaks the quiet, distant, desperate, echoing through the cave tunnels. A wolf's howl, frantic and human all at once. Lyria stands instantly, her instincts flaring. That's a messenger's call. Kaelin's head lifts, his body tensing despite the pain. The echo comes again, closer now, accompanied by the sound of hurried footsteps splashing through shallow water. A young wolf bursts into the chamber, dirt and blood smeared across his face. His chest heaves as he kneels before Kaelin. My king, he gasps. The council knows. They've seen the prophecy mark. They've declared her death sentence. The world stops moving. Lyria's throat closes. For a second, all she hears is the rush of blood in her ears. Kaelin rises, ignoring the pain as his wound stretches open again. Who signed it? Elder Cato, the messenger stammers. He claims the flame is a threat to every bloodline. He's called for her execution at dawn. Lyria's voice breaks through the silence, sharp and trembling. Execution? For what? For being born wrong? The messenger lowers his gaze, ashamed. For being born chosen. Kaelin's expression hardens, every trace of gentleness vanishing. The alpha within him stirs, the king beneath the disguise rising to the surface once more. The cave seems to react, shadows bending, the air vibrating with restrained power. Lyria steps back, watching him transform, not physically, but in presence. His voice, when he speaks, carries authority carved from centuries. Gather the loyal. Send word to the northern packs. No one touches her. Not while I breathe. The messenger hesitates. But the council will face their true king, Kaelin finishes. His tone leaves no space for doubt. The young wolf bows deeply and rushes out, his footsteps fading into the tunnels. When they are alone again, the silence that follows is heavy with everything unsaid. Lyria crosses her arms, her pulse unsteady. You can't fight them all, Kaelin. They're your counsel. Your own blood. His eyes meet hers, golden, fierce, and unyielding. I've fought worse for less. They'll call it rebellion. Then rebellion it is. Her voice rises, anger and fear colliding. You're willing to risk your throne, your life, for me? He takes a step closer, the shadows shifting with him. I've lived centuries behind walls built on lies. You're the first truth I've ever touched. Her breath falters. She wants to argue, to pull away, but his words sink too deep, burn too real. I don't need saving, she whispers. Then don't call it saving, he says softly. Call it choosing. Something inside her cracks open. The pain, the fear, the defiance, all of it begins to melt into something dangerous and pure. She looks at him, really looks, the king, the warrior, the man. And for the first time, she sees not just his strength, but the loneliness beneath it. I don't know if I can do this, she admits, her voice trembling. Everywhere I go, I bring destruction. I touch things, and they burn. He reaches out, his hand gentle as he tucks a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Maybe you were never meant to stop burning. Maybe you were meant to teach the world how to rise from it. Her throat tightens. And if I fail? He leans closer, his forehead brushing hers again. Then I'll burn with you. The words land between them like a vow. Outside, thunder rolls across the mountains, echoing their hearts. Inside the cave, the fire flares brighter, the veins of moonfire pulsing like veins of a living creature. They stand there, two souls broken and bound by prophecy, by fate, by choice. She closes her eyes, breathing him in, the scent of pine, smoke, and something softer, something that feels like home. Her wolf quiets, her heart steadies. Trust me, he whispers. She exhales slowly. Or leave, he adds, the faintest tremor in his tone betraying the fear he rarely shows. Her eyes open. I'm still here. A silence falls that feels like the beginning of something sacred. The mountain listens. The gods hold their breath. And for a heartbeat, love, raw, flawed, and defiant, exists in its truest form. But fate, as always, waits just beyond the light. The thunder had not yet faded when silence swept through the Colosseum. The storm carried her scent into the sky, wild, fierce, broken. Kalen stood at its heart, ash coating his armor, breath shallow, eyes hollow. Around him, the council knelt in fear, but he could not hear their pleas. His kingdom roared for blood, yet his soul cried only for the one who had vanished into the tempest. He had worn masks all his life, king, savior, warrior, but never had any felt heavier than now. Lyria's absence clawed at his chest, tearing open a truth he had long buried. All his power, his armies, his throne meant nothing without her. The prophecy had warned of a curse, not of love, but of blindness, a blindness of the heart that no sight could cure. He turned from the crowd. Each step echoed against the marble as he descended from the dais. The guards dared not move. The golden crown that once symbolized divine rule burned against his scalp, a brand of failure. When he reached the archway leading out of the arena, he ripped it free and let it fall. It clattered to the ground, rolling through the dust like a discarded lie. Outside, the rain came down in sheets, washing blood from the streets. He followed her scent through the city, through corridors of broken statues and ruined shrines. Each step was a memory, her laughter in the cave, the tremor in her voice when she spoke of freedom, the moment she looked at him not as a king but as a man. At the edge of the city, the scent faded. The wind carried only smoke. He knelt, pressing his hand to the earth, calling his wolf forward. The beast within answered with a low growl, restless and pained. He had always been able to find her, through battle, through fire, through fate, but now, even the bond felt thin, uncertain. He whispered her name. The forest answered with silence. Lyria had run until her lungs burned and her legs trembled. The storm shielded her escape, lightning splitting the heavens as if the gods themselves raged on her behalf. When she finally collapsed, it was beneath the ancient oaks of the northern wilds, a land untouched by kingdoms, ruled only by spirits and shadow. She pressed her palms into the soil. The ground pulsed faintly beneath her touch, as though alive. Her magic stirred, raw and untamed. The silver marks on her arms glowed faintly through the rain, lines of prophecy etched into her skin. She didn't want to see them. Didn't want to believe she was anything more than a curse. He had lied. He had worn another face, another truth. Yet in the depths of her chest, her heart refused to let him go. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him kneeling beside her in the temple ruins, whispering, "You've been hunted long enough." Now she was hunted again, only this time, by her own heart. She tried to quiet the storm within, to suppress the energy rising in her blood, but the elements obeyed no restraint. Flames shimmered beneath her skin. The ground trembled, roots shifting beneath her fingers. In the distance, a whisper echoed through the rain, "She who was sold shall rule the sold." Her head snapped up. A figure moved between the trees, not a man, but something older. Cloaked in mist, its eyes gleamed silver. "Who are you?" she demanded. The figure tilted its head. "The one who remembers before the gods forgot," it said. "You carry the mark of the chosen flame, yet you run from it." She backed away, every instinct warning her of danger. "I never asked for this. I never wanted power. I just wanted peace." "Peace," the figure murmured, "is the dream of those who have not yet met their purpose." The wind swirled around her, lifting her hair. The spirit's gaze pierced through her defiance. "The king falters. The world trembles. The curse binds not your blood, but your fear. When you choose, truly choose, the moonfire will awaken." Before she could speak, the figure vanished, leaving only a shimmer in the air. She stood there, trembling, rain mingling with tears she refused to admit were falling. The words echoed in her head, "The king falters." Against her will, her thoughts returned to him, to Kaelin, bleeding beneath the weight of a crown he never wanted, torn between duty and love. Her anger flared again, but beneath it pulsed something deeper, softer, terrifying. She still loved him. Back at the Colosseum, Marcus Baron knelt before the shattered throne. The council was in chaos, arguing about omens and rebellion. But Marcus's smile was cold. "The prophecy unfolds," he whispered. "Let it. When the flame consumes the king, I will rise from the ashes." He turned to his followers, priests draped in crimson, eyes gleaming with fanatic devotion. "Spread the word. The witch has escaped, and the king hides her treachery. The empire must purge the blood of the cursed." Within hours, torches lit the horizon. Armies rallied under his command. The hunt began. Kaelin did not return to his palace. Instead, he rode into the mountains, seeking the only one who could guide him, the Oracle of Vera, a blind seeress who had once served his mother. The climb was treacherous, the path wound through cliffs and ravines, through winds sharp enough to cut skin. But he pressed on, the bond with Lyria flickering faintly in his chest like a dying ember. When he reached the summit, the oracle waited beside a pool of still water. She was ancient, her hair silver as the moon, her eyes clouded but unseeing. "You've come too late, my king," she said. "The flame has awakened." He dropped to his knees. "Tell me where she is." "She walks between worlds now," the oracle said. "Neither wolf nor goddess, neither slave nor queen. The moment you betrayed your heart, the bond fractured. Only she can mend it, or burn it to ash." His hands clenched. "Then I'll find her. I'll face whatever stands in my way." The oracle smiled faintly. "Be careful, Kaelin. The greatest danger is not losing her, but earning her forgiveness." Days passed. Lyria wandered deeper into the wilds. Each night, her dreams grew stranger, visions of fire and moonlight, of wolves bowing to her, of Kaelin's voice echoing through a storm. She awoke each morning with her heart racing, the line between dream and memory blurring. One night, she found herself drawn to a cliff overlooking a valley of white mist. The moon hung low, enormous and blood-red. She closed her eyes and let her wolf rise, bones shifting, senses sharpening. For the first time, she didn't fight it. The transformation was agony and release all at once. Her body burned with light, silver flames dancing through her fur. When she opened her eyes, she saw the world as it truly was, threads of energy weaving between trees, rivers of moonfire flowing through the land. She held, and the mountains answered. Somewhere far below, Kaelin felt it, a surge of power that ripped through his chest. His wolf stirred, eyes flashing gold. He knew that sound. He had heard it once before, in dreams. Without hesitation, he turned his horse north. When they finally met again, it was beneath a broken sky. The battlefield stretched across the valley, Marcus's army on one side, Kaelin's loyalists on the other. Between them, Lyria stood, wreathed in silver fire, her eyes glowing like stars. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Kaelin dismounted, walking slowly across the field. The soldiers parted before him, awed by the power radiating from both of them. "Lyria," he said, voice steady though his heart trembled, "you shouldn't have come." "I didn't come for you," she replied, though her voice cracked with the weight of the lie. "I came to end this." Marcus laughed from the hilltop. "Then burn, witch." He raised his sword, and the signal flares shot into the air. The armies charged. The earth split with the clash of claws and steel. Magic crackled like thunder. Kaelin's wolf tore through the front lines, his eyes locked on Marcus, but every strike was shadowed by his fear for her. Lyria fought like something divine, every motion fluid, every breath a storm. Fire spilled from her hands, searing the sky. But even as she unleashed her power, she felt the emptiness of it. Without him, it was only destruction. When Marcus finally reached her, his blade met her flames, and for a moment, silver met crimson in a blinding flash. The explosion tore the clouds apart. Kaelin reached her just as she fell. He caught her in his arms, shielding her from the debris. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his hand. "Why do you always bleed for me?" she whispered. "Because my soul recognized you before my eyes ever did." Tears mingled with rain as he pressed his forehead to hers. Around them, the battle raged on, but in that moment, there was only silence, two hearts bound by pain, by prophecy, by something older than fate itself. The sky burned with dawn as the last of the fighting faded. Marcus lay defeated, his army scattered. But Kaelin did not rise. He stayed beside her, his hand over hers, feeling the faint warmth of her power still pulsing. She stirred, barely conscious. "What happens now?" He smiled faintly. "Now, we stop running." And as the first light of morning touched their faces, the moonfire that had cursed her began to fade, not as punishment, but as release. The prophecy had not been about ruin or rule, but rebirth. Two souls, once broken, now whole, forged in flame, bound by the wild. The world that had fought them now knelt in silence. And somewhere deep within the forest, the spirit's whisper returned, softer this time, almost reverent. The flame was never meant to destroy. It was meant to see. The world was breaking. The air carried the scent of ash and fear, rivers ran black from burned roots, and the once lush valleys of the Leacan Empire lay hollow beneath a sky stripped of stars. The moon itself flickered behind clouds of smoke, dim and distant, as though even the heavens feared what was awakening below. Weeks had passed since the battle. The people whispered her name like a curse and a prayer, Lyria, the flame unbound. Some said she had vanished into the wilds to heal. Others said she had become a storm that walked on 2 feet. But Kaelin knew the truth. She had become more than legend. She had become the balance between creation and destruction, and she was slipping further from him with each day that passed. He searched without rest. Each night, he followed faint traces of her scent through scorched forests, through ruins where the walls still remembered her flames. Sleep was a stranger to him. Regret was his only companion. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing in that field, silver fire in her veins, his name trembling on her lips before the world tore them apart again. The empire rotted without her. The crops failed. Wolves turned feral, tearing through villages as if possessed. Temples that once glowed with moonlight now crumbled, their priests whispering that the gods had turned their gaze away. The council demanded order, but their king could no longer pretend to rule. His crown lay forgotten on the throne. His heart had gone with her. Then one night, when the moon rose red again, he found the trail. A path of burned leaves led through the deadwood to a clearing that pulsed with unnatural light. And there, at the heart of it, she stood. The altar of the moon goddess loomed before her, cracked and ancient, its marble veins glowing faintly beneath her presence. Lyria's aura burned brighter than any fire he'd ever seen, alive, fluid, shimmering silver that danced along her skin like living flame. Her hair whipped in the wind, eyes reflecting the storm that churned above. She was no longer the outcast he had met beneath temple steps. She was divine, terrifying and beautiful, both mortal and something far beyond. He wanted to speak, but the air itself seemed to hold him still. She raised her hands toward the broken altar. The ground trembled as whispers filled the air, thousands of voices layered together, rising like a hymn. The light around her condensed, swirling until it took form, a woman, vast and luminous, her eyes twin moons. The moon goddess. Her voice was not a sound but a vibration that rippled through the soul. Child of flame, she said, the world burns in your shadow. Will you destroy, or deliver? Lyria's breath hitched. Her wolf stirred within, restless, uncertain. You call me child, yet you let them sell me. Let them chain me. You watched as I was branded a curse. The goddess regarded her in silence, expression neither cruel nor kind. Every flame must burn before it can warm. Every queen must bleed before she can heal. You were never meant to obey, only to choose. Her fists tightened. The air shimmered around her. Then I choose freedom. Not yours. Not theirs. Mine. The goddess stepped closer, her form dissolving into tendrils of silver mist. Freedom, she whispered, is never without consequence. Before Lyria could answer, the sound of horns cut through the night. The trees shook. Fire flared at the horizon. Marcus had come. His army spilled into the clearing, banners torn, armor stained with soot. Behind him marched the priests and hunters who had sworn to cleanse her name from history. Their chants filled the air, dark and rhythmic, drowning the goddess's fading light. And at their head, battered but unbroken, Kalen rode through the ranks, blood streaking his armor. His wolf pushed at the surface, desperate to reach her. He dismounted before the altar, falling to one knee. His voice cracked against the roar of the wind. Lyria. Her power trembled, unstable, wild. The ground burned beneath her feet. Stay back, she warned, her voice breaking. If I lose control. He took a step forward. Then let me burn. The words hit her like a blade. She turned toward him, her silver eyes wide with anguish. You don't understand what I've become. I understand enough, he said. That your fire isn't meant to destroy. It's meant to cleanse. You showed me that the night you saved me from myself. Behind him, Marcus's laughter cut through the storm. Listen to him, the blind king who would kneel before a witch. You think love can rewrite prophecy? Kalen rose slowly, gaze fixed on Lyria. Prophecies don't decide who we are. We do. Marcus sneered and raised his blade. Then you die defying the gods. He lunged, and the army surged forward with him. The world became chaos. Arrows of light tore through the sky. Wolves clashed with men. Fire collided with steel. And at the center, Lyria stood frozen, the weight of it all pressing down, the goddess's question still echoing in her soul. Will you destroy, or deliver? Kalen reached her just as Marcus's blade found his side. He staggered but did not fall, his hand reaching for hers. Their fingers met, and in that instant, everything else vanished, the noise, the blood, the fear. Look at me, he said softly, even as blood soaked his armor. If your fire must burn, let it burn through me, not them. Tears spilled down her cheeks, glowing silver in the moonlight. Her power surged, wild and infinite. The air trembled with it, light bending, trees bowing. You fool, she whispered. You'd die for me? I already did, he murmured. The day I let them call you cursed. The flames erupted around them, but this time, they didn't consume. They transformed. Silver fire wrapped around their bodies, swallowing Marcus's army in a wave of light. The soldiers screamed, not in pain, but in release. The chains of their oaths shattered. The earth trembled as roots broke free of stone. Marcus stumbled backward, eyes wide as his sword melted in his hands. What are you? He choked. Lyria stepped forward, power radiating from her in waves. I am not your sacrifice, she said, her voice no longer human, no longer bound. I am the flame that chooses. She raised her hands, and the fire burst outward. Marcus screamed as the light engulfed him, his body dissolving into ash that rose like dust into the wind. When it was done, silence fell. The forest glowed with new life, grass sprouting through charred soil, rivers running clear again. The moon emerged from the clouds, shining silver and whole. Kalen fell to his knees, the fire receding from his body. Lyria knelt beside him, pressing her hand over the wound on his side. Her touch burned, but it was a healing burn, cleansing, closing, binding. He looked up at her through heavy breaths. You saved them. She shook her head. No. I freed them. Their eyes met, her silver against his molten gold, and the world seemed to breathe again. The goddess's voice whispered faintly through the wind, the cycle ends. The balance restored. But Lyria wasn't looking at the goddess anymore. She was looking at him, the man who had knelt in the dirt for her, who had seen her when no one else dared to. Her voice trembled. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. He smiled weakly. That's what love does. It sees through the fire. She pressed her forehead to his, their breaths mingling, hearts beating in rhythm with the reborn world around them. The flames faded, leaving only light, pure, soft, eternal. When dawn rose, the empire was no longer an empire. It was a kingdom reborn, one led not by fear or bloodlines, but by choice. At its heart stood a woman once called cursed, and a king who chose blindness over pride. Together, they watched the horizon where the first rays of sunlight touched the land. Lyria lifted her hand, watching the light gather in her palm. The fire's quiet now, she whispered. Kalen took her hand gently. Because it's no longer a weapon. It's you. And for the first time since the beginning of all their pain, she smiled, not as a warrior, not as a queen, but as a soul finally free. The wind carried her laughter across the mountains, soft and unbound. The forest bent toward her warmth. The moon lingered, silver and watchful, as if proud of what she had become. The goddess was gone. The chains were broken. The prophecy fulfilled not through destruction, but through love that refused to yield. And though the world still trembled from the echoes of her flame, it no longer trembled in fear, it trembled in awe. Because the girl they once sold as unworthy had become the light that remade them all. Under the shroud of moonlight, the world stands silent. The empire that once held with arrogance now kneels in trembling awe, its pillars scorched, its banners turned to ash. The air hums with the remnants of divine fire, and in that stillness, two figures remain, Lyria and Kalen, bound by ruin, rebirth, and the unspoken agony that lingers between them. The moonfire that once raged now glows gently upon their faces, washing their exhaustion in silver. Kalen's hand, bloodied and trembling, reaches toward her, but stops inches away. He no longer knows if he's worthy to touch the woman who just rewrote destiny. The silence between them is heavy, not with words unsaid, but with everything that's already been burned away. Her hair drifts in the wind like smoke from dying embers. The glow in her eyes has dimmed, not from weakness, but from the quiet aftermath of revelation. Around them, wolves, once enslaved by magic and bloodline, bow their heads. Not in servitude, but reverence. They feel her power. They feel her grief. They feel the quiet choice she made, to save them all at the cost of herself. Kalen's voice breaks the silence, hoarse and raw. You became what they feared, and what they needed. She doesn't turn. Her voice, low and fractured, carries the weight of 1,000 broken vows. I didn't want to become anything. I just wanted to be free. The words pierce him deeper than any blade. Freedom. The one thing he could never give her when she needed it most. He looks at the destruction around them, the melted altars, the smoldering ruins of temples that once worshipped lies, and realizes she has done what no army ever could. She ended the reign of fear. Yet in doing so, she's become its echo. The sky above churns with colors not of this world, lavender smoke, threads of light like veins across the horizon. The moon goddess's voice lingers in the ether, faint but unmistakable, her tone neither warm nor cruel. Every power claimed births a question: who will you become now, child of flame? Lyria closes her eyes. The power still hums under her skin, restless, alive. It no longer demands to be unleashed, it simply exists, part of her essence now. Yet peace feels foreign, undeserved. She saved them, yes, but what of the part of her that wanted vengeance? What of the darkness that whispered she was born not to heal, but to burn? Kalen steps closer, until his shadow merges with hers. You could destroy me right now, he says quietly. And I'd let you. Because I did destroy you once. She turns then, her expression unreadable. No. You didn't destroy me. You only showed me what I had to become to survive. The wind howls through the broken Colosseum arches. Somewhere far off, the first howl of a newborn wolf echoes, a new generation, born in her light, not in chains. Yet even as life begins anew, she feels the hollow ache inside her chest widening. The prophecy was fulfilled. The curse undone. But the story isn't finished, because peace never comes easily to those who were forged in war. Kalen lowers his head. If there's a place for me in what you're building, I'll earn it. Even if it takes a lifetime. Her hand brushes against his, a fleeting contact like the brush of wind across flame. There's no empire left to rebuild, Kalen. Only truth. Only balance. And that begins with letting go. He lifts his gaze to her, seeing not the girl he once betrayed, but the woman who stood against gods. Then teach me how. A faint smile ghosts across her lips, a sad, weary acknowledgement of what could have been and what might still be. Then listen, she whispers, to what the silence says. And in that silence, something ancient shifts. The wolves lift their heads toward the moon, not in mourning, but in unity. The bond that once enslaved them has turned into something sacred, freedom bound by respect, not fear. The silver light wraps around Lyria, soft yet commanding, as if the goddess herself bows to her creation. But within her, a storm brews still. Her flames flicker beneath her skin, restless. For all the world sees her as savior, she knows she stands on the edge of something far greater, and far more dangerous. Power never truly ends, it evolves. It waits. It watches. And deep down, she senses another prophecy whispering, one not yet spoken aloud. The goddess's final words echo again, fainter this time. Child of flame, the world is reborn. But remember, light casts the longest shadow. Lyria's gaze drifts toward the horizon where dawn bleeds into night. Then I'll walk in both, she murmurs. Kalen watches her, awe and fear intertwining. The woman before him is no longer just the flame bride. She's the embodiment of balance itself, divine and human, mercy and wrath. And as her power pulses through the land, rivers turn to silver, flowers bloom in scorched soil, and the wolves howl in reverence once more. He steps closer, his voice low, filled with trembling honesty. Tell me this, Lyria. After everything, after betrayal, after blood, after fire, do you still believe in love? Her eyes meet his, luminous and infinite. Love is the only thing that survived. The world exhales. The ashes of the past rise into the wind, carrying with them whispers of redemption, pain, and beginnings not yet written. The wolves disperse, returning to the forests. The moon fades behind soft clouds, leaving only starlight and the quiet hum of a future unknown. But as she turns to leave, her power leaves a trail of faint luminescence behind her, marking her path like a living memory. Kalen watches, torn between following her and letting her go. He knows now that love isn't possession, it's surrender. And so he stays, kneeling amidst the ruins, whispering her name into the dawn. Above, the heavens remain still, as though the goddess herself waits for what comes next. Because even divine stories crave endings that aren't endings. And then, as the light shifts, a voice, hers or the goddess's, no one can tell, echoes softly across the remnants of the empire. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? The words linger in the air, threading through the ruins, the forests, the hearts of those who still dream. Another whisper follows, just as haunting. Is she a savior, or a storm born to cleanse the world? The moon hides, and silence reigns. If this story stirred your soul, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn, heal, and remember. The light fades, but the silence is not still. Beneath the ruins, the pulse of the earth beats slow and heavy, like a sleeping god exhaling through stone. Lyria's eyes lift to the crimson moon that stains the horizon, a color not born of dawn or dusk, but of omen. The flames she had summoned now lie dormant across the scorched valley, breathing faint embers into the wind. The wolves that once bowed in reverence begin to stir uneasily, their instincts whispering a truth the mind cannot yet name. Something ancient has awakened. The air thickens with the scent of iron and forgotten magic. The prophecy's echo has not ended, it lingers, unfinished, twisting through the charred trees. She steps forward, bare feet brushing against ash that still glows faintly silver. Kalen stands beside her, his golden eyes dimmed with exhaustion and awe. Yet beneath his calm, the air hums with an unease even he cannot disguise. For every victory carves a new debt, and every prophecy fulfilled births another shadow. The crimson moon drips light like blood upon the ruined temples of Lupra's Vale. Its reflection ripples in pools of molten silver where the ground once held sacred water. The wind carries whispers not of wolves, but of names, forgotten kings, buried queens, children born under forbidden stars. The voices speak to her, calling her not by the name the world gave, but the one carved in divine fire before her birth. She feels the resonance in her bones, a vibration that threads through every scar she carries. Kalen watches her from a distance, sensing the shift. Her aura no longer burns merely with mortal flame. It pulses with something older, untamed, echoing the rhythm of creation and ruin. She feels both the burden and the freedom of it. The moon goddess had not given her peace, she had given her purpose. And purpose, she now understood, was rarely merciful. A low rumble travels through the ground. The wolves recoil, ears flat, as fissures snake across the soil, glowing red from beneath. Lyria's breath stills. The light is not fire, it's heartlight, the lifeblood of the earth stirring from its slumber. She senses it, something vast beneath the surface, something bound long before men built empires or wolves formed packs. A presence that remembers her power. A presence that remembers his. Kalen steps closer, the weight of his lineage pressing like armor upon his spirit. He feels it too, the recognition, the call. The earth knows the scent of its kings. Yet what answers them now is not reverence but hunger. A growl rises from below, shaking dust from the ruins. Wolves whimper. The crimson moon trembles. Lyria's silver flames flare unbidden, responding to the unseen force clawing its way toward the surface. The prophecy's final line returns to her mind, half remembered from the temple fire's vision, when the bride of flame unbinds her crown, the first beast shall wake to claim his throne. She had thought it meant Kalen. She had thought it meant redemption. But the tremor beneath her feet tells another story. This is no king. This is the ruin that kings were built to contain. The mountain shudders again. From the crack seeps darkness, not shadow, but living smoke, thick and ancient, crawling across the ruins like spilled ink. Where it touches stone, the surface blackens, where it touches light, the glow dims. Kalen unsheathes his blade, forged from the bones of extinct lichens, the edge humming against the vibration in the air. Yet even that divine metal quivers as though afraid. Lyria lifts her gaze to him, eyes reflecting both defiance and despair. The fire that once healed now circles her like a barrier, a desperate instinct to protect. She knows what rises is beyond battle, beyond spell, beyond faith. It is the origin of the curse itself, the primal will that demanded blood for balance and sorrow for power. A crack splits the temple floor open, wide and breathing. From it pours heat so intense it warps the air. The wolves scatter into the shadows, their howls echoing like morning bells. Kalen moves before her, but she places a hand on his chest, stopping him. She can feel the pulse of his heart, fierce yet mortal. He cannot face this. Not yet. The growl becomes a voice. Not language, but vibration, deep, resonant, crawling into the marrow of every living thing. The ruins bow under its tone. The sky flickers. The crimson moon bleeds brighter. She hears the whisper in her mind, vast and cruel and strangely intimate. You were never meant to mend what I broke. Her hands ignite. Flames of silver spiral around her arms, wings of energy unfolding from her back, their edges sharp as blades of starlight. She stands her ground as the darkness forms a shape, a colossal wolf, older than gods, fur woven from smoke and shadow, eyes like eclipsed suns. The first beast. The one who taught wolves to hunger, men to conquer, and gods to fear. Kaelin drops to one knee, not from reverence, but the sheer gravity of its presence. He knows the legend, the devourer, the moon's forsaken son. It was his bloodline's duty to keep it sealed. And now, through prophecy and fate, through love and betrayal, they had set it free. Lyria's flames clash against the shadow's breath, the air igniting between them in storms of light and dark. The earth trembles under their will. Trees bend until they snap. Rivers turn to steam. Her body aches under the strain, every vein glowing as if her soul burns inside her flesh. She can hear the goddess's voice faintly in the roar, pleading this time, not commanding. Do not fight what was made to be eternal. But she refuses. She has spent her life bound by others' words, slave, reject, cursed, chosen. Now, she will be neither savior nor destroyer. She will be her own name. The fire in her heart rises beyond the silver hue, turning white, pure and soundless. Even the shadow recoils at its touch. Kaelin forces himself to stand, his body trembling. His golden aura flares as he calls upon the last remnants of the Lichen King's power. He steps into her light, merging his will with hers. Flame and gold twist together, light meeting light until the boundary between them disappears. Their souls, once divided by secrets and pain, now fuse into one relentless blaze. The first beast roars. The sound splits the sky. But within that fury, it hesitates. The light blinds it, not because of power, but because of what it cannot comprehend, unity born from defiance. For the first time in millennia, the darkness does not feed. It falters. Lyria takes the moment. She lifts her hands to the heavens, calling upon the crimson moon itself. Her flames surge upward, wrapping around its glow. The red fades to silver, then white. The world holds its breath. Then, silence. The shadow collapses inward, sucked into the wound it tore in the earth. The fissures close. The night calms. But the world does not cheer. Because peace, as she has learned, is only the pause between storms. She falls to her knees, breath shallow, body trembling from the power drained. Kaelin catches her before she hits the ground, holding her close. His heart races against her back. She hears it as if it were her own. The moonlight paints them in silver, but the warmth between them feels painfully human. Around them, the wolves return, silent, wary. The ruins stand scorched yet whole. The wind smells of rain and rebirth. Yet beneath it all lies something colder, a faint heartbeat echoing deep underground, too steady to belong to the dead. Kaelin lifts his head, golden eyes flicking toward the horizon. The crimson tint lingers faintly on the moon's edge, like a scar refusing to fade. The prophecy's last whisper drifts again through the night. She is not the only one. He tightens his arms around her. The warmth in his chest turns to ice. There was another flame once, before her. Another chosen buried in time. Another soul tied to the balance. He realizes then what the goddess meant, the curse does not die, it changes hands. Lyria stirs, her voice barely a breath. It's not over, is it? He doesn't answer. The silence is answer enough. Far below, in the forgotten chambers beneath the ruins, a pulse of red light flickers once, steady, deliberate, watching. And in that glow, a new voice awakens, softer but sharper than the first. The queen has risen. The heir must fall. The wind howls across the mountains, carrying with it the scent of future wars and unspoken vows. The wolves lift their heads to the pale dawn, unaware that the night they fear has only changed its shape. Above them, the moon fades behind clouds, hiding its face, not from shame, but from what it has set in motion. And so the world breathes again, fragile and temporary, balanced on the edge of another beginning. Because every prophecy ends the same way. With a silence that dares you to listen. And somewhere, deep in that silence, the question lingers. Will she become the flame that saves them? Or the fire that finally ends it all? The answer waits beyond the next moon. This isn't over.